that as you get better in agility, let's say you have a linear growth, the expectations you have of yourself might be exponentially growing. And then it becomes a gap between what you expect of yourself and how you perform. And that gap, that causes a lot of negative emotions. Can you have an increase of performance at the same time that you have an increase of joy? Or is it two sides of a seesaw that you either have to choose high performance and low joy, or you have to choose high joy but low performance? Hi, and welcome to The Champion's Journey. My name is Christopher Anderson. I'm your host, and today is a solo episode. And I wanted to talk about why getting better at agility might be stealing the joy from doing the sport. I call agility a sport because I truly view it as one. It's not just an activity, it is a sport. There's speed, there's commitment, there's training, there's discipline. Everything is attached to it. And I want to take you back to when you started with agility. What was the reason why you started with it? Well, one of the things that I see as a pattern with most agility handlers that I speak to is because they see it as a fun activity together with their dog. There's speed involved, as I mentioned, there is a challenge, and it is something that our dogs enjoy doing. Now, you might have started with joining a friend or joining a club, and you get a set of challenges. And as you get better at building your skills and improving your skills, it becomes fun. And then you sign up for your first competition. It is still challenge. It's the next level of challenge. And you might not get it. There might be things that are difficult. You go back, you develop new skills, you come back to a new competition, and you're seeing that you're getting better, you're having fun. And as you get better, you're starting to experience this flow state where you really nail the balance between challenge and the skill set that you have. You come to a competition, you get a course, never seen it before, you make a plan, you decide how you will handle it, you show up with your dog, and there's this connection, there's this flow, there's this clarity, and you go on the course, the judge raises his hand, blows the whistle, and on your command, the dog starts, and it's full game. You're just in the moment. You're taking obstacle by obstacle. You're dealing with things as they come, and eventually you cross the finishing line, and it's just pure joy. It's this fantastic rush that you actually made it through. You take the toy, you reward the dog, you celebrate with the dog, and it might be that that run even got you on the podium, that got you your first ribbon, and suddenly you're hooked. And then you want more. You want more of that experience. So you continue with training, you maybe put in more effort, and you go to more competitions, and you're in the game. But there's a challenge there that is happening slowly, bit by bit. So slow that most people aren't noticing it. As you're getting better in agility, what happens is that the expectations that you have of yourself, the expectations you have of your dog and how you perform, and also maybe the expectations of others is increasing. And that is the challenge. Because if you raise the bar too high, that might cause you to not be able to go over the bar. So as a metaphor, you're tearing the bar. And when that happens many times, you start to lose the joy of the sport. And I see this happen a lot. And it's happening so slowly that people aren't noticing it. That as you get better in agility, let's say you have a linear growth, the expectations you have of yourself might be exponentially growing. And then it becomes a gap between what you expect of yourself and how you perform. And that gap, that causes a lot of negative emotions, a lot of negative thought, and it is a challenge. And what I see is that even professional athletes, people that are handling and going to international events, they come to a point where they see that, where's the joy in this? Where's the fun? And the initial reason, their initial why they started with the sport in the beginning, when it was just a hobby and an activity, is no longer there. Because it's all about performance. It's all about getting better. It is all about doing your very best to meet the expectations that you have of yourself or that you think that others have of you. And that becomes a challenge. And that could actually kill the joy that you have for the sport. And that is a conflict that a lot of people don't know how to deal with. And the byproduct of this is that people lose motivation. That's how they start to notice this. What is interesting is that the word motivation, in it has the word motive. Motive is another word for your reasons for doing things. And we can also say that that is your why. Why do you do this? And when you're not doing it anymore for the ribbons or the placement or the titles and whatever it might be, that you notice that those things aren't giving you any joy necessarily, or at least it's only a short burst of joy, then you have to go back to what is your primary reason. Why did you start with agility? And this is the fundament or the foundation of your performance is joy. Now, a lot of people think that if you're just doing it for the joy, then that might actually lower your performance. And I really want to address this and look at it at a deeper level. And I've been using a lot of energy and thinking about this because it is an important topic. The question is, can you have both? Can you have an increase of performance at the same time that you have an increase of joy? Or is it two sides of a seesaw that you either have to choose high performance and low joy, or you have to choose high joy but low performance? One of my favorite books is a book called Solve for Happy. It's written by a man called Mo Gawdat. I think I pronounced his name correctly. But he is from Egypt. He was an engineer, and then he lost his son. I think I mentioned him before in the podcast, but he wanted to figure out, how can I be happy? Because he was at a place in his life where he fulfilled all the criteria of success based on at least Western standards. He had the house, the wife, the cars, or the houses even. He had the position, the work, the salary that was just beyond what most people consider reasonable or possible. And then he lost his son. His son died during the surgery. Where's the source of happiness? It's not in the things and the titles. And how could he go from grieving to come back to this source of happiness? Because for him, his son was the symbol of happiness, because it was a very happy and grateful and joyful guy. At least it's in his image. And he started to look at, how can I actually find a soul for happy? And he came up with a formula that our happiness is equal or greater than our perception of events. So how we perceive events minus our expectations of what should happen. So he experienced misery because he expected to outlive his son, but then he lost his son. And that caused misery in his life. And it became quite a challenge for him to turn it around. Because he wanted to become happy again, to find joy in life, because that was the thing that his son wanted for him. This equation is fantastic in many ways because we can relate to it in life in general when we lose someone we truly love and means a lot to us. But it's also relatable to agility. Let's say you're going to an outdoor event and competition. Let's say that you look at the weather forecast and you see that it will rain on Saturday when you are running heavily, big rain coming in, and it will rain where you are having your competition. You still decide to go to the competition. You show up, and then what happens is that the rain doesn't come. The weather changed, and it decided to pour its rain somewhere else and not where you were running. And the whole day was just sunny. So your expectations was that it will rain, but your perception of the event was that it was a sunny day. How would that influence your mood? It would probably make you feel grateful, joyful, thrilled even, just because of the external events, your expectations, and what actually happened. Let's say that you had a different competition at a different weekend, and you look at the weather forecast, and you see that it will be sunny. You go to the competition place, and you're about to run, and then it just starts to pour. And it's like 1,000 water hoses are just pointing at you, making it both challenging and maybe even dangerous for you to complete the run. How would you feel then? So, as you might see, that managing our expectations is an important part in terms of how much joy we have. But there's the conflict, because if we look at the equation, we could say that what if we just remove our expectations or just lower our expectations? Then we can feel that joy and happiness, right? And the answer to that is yes, it's true. But what happens if we lower our expectations? Will our performance suffer as a consequence? What will happen if we don't hold our criteria on the seesaw, on the weaves, on the dog walk, on the running context? It might be that you have more enjoyment of the run, but at the same time, your performance will suffer as a consequence. And I've been struggling with this and thinking a lot about it. How can you actually ensure that you can have both? That you can have good performance or increase your performance at the same time as you maintain or even strengthen and lift up your enjoyment of the sport that you're doing. And that comes to the other part of the equation, which is the perception of events. Now, there's another way of doing it. So instead of thinking how you see things happen, it's really about your perspective in life in general. One of the things that I talked about in the early podcast is the importance of gratitude. Because gratitude is something that theology, biology, psychology, philosophy, and many other titles would fee behind it, says is a fantastic tool. It is an important tool. And in that episode, I said that sitting down and just trying to be grateful isn't necessarily the best approach to it, because we will be able to write a list the first time, but we're not necessarily generating the feeling of it, because gratitude isn't just a way of thinking, it's how we feel about it. And my approach that I've learned and adjusted and tailored, and what seems to work for me and that I would like to share with you, is that your approach towards becoming grateful is actually to ask yourself the question, what do I take for granted? Because there's so many things that we just expect in our lives to work, but we get frustrated when it doesn't. That could be water in your house. It could be electricity so that you can have lights. It could be Wi-Fi. If your Wi-Fi isn't working, that could definitely make you miserable. There's so many things that we just expect to work, and we just get frustrated and angry if they don't. And that means that there are so many things in our lives that we take for granted. But if we ask ourselves the questions, what do I take for granted? And then we start to list things down. And then as we look at that list, we use that as a trigger to actually appreciate it. There's a saying that if you can replace expectations with appreciations, your life will change. Because you change your perception of things. Now, one of the things that I think is the toughest part with agility is the fact that you will outlive your teammate. And you have X amount of years that it takes to build a really good and skillful dog in dog agility. It might take 3, 4, 5 years before it's really at that high level that you want it to. And they might live 10 years, 12, 13, maybe less. And I know for sure for us that we had a dog, EC, that in my mind, I expected her to live until she was probably 14, 15 years old, but passed away due to cancer at the age of 5. That created a whole lot of grief and misery for us because it was a dog that was really, really close to us, as all our dogs are. But the expectations of them living a full life wasn't met because that is what life gives us. However, sitting down and looking at that list, first asking yourself the question, what do I take for granted? And as you ask that question, you will create a long list. And it's like a forever list. And then you sit down and you really appreciate it. You can use negative visualization to imagine how your life will be without it. And as you do that, you kind of lower the expectations, you lower the bar, and then you really appreciate it there in the moment. And as you do this, as you increase your appreciations, you're tipping the scale. And the message is that we should not necessarily eliminate our expectations, but if we have high expectations of ourselves and of others, we need to make damn sure that we are fulfilling the other side of that seesaw, that we are increasing our appreciation of the things that we take for granted. By focusing on that, we can create somewhat of a balance. And as we maintain that balance, we will have both high performance and high joy. So how can you actually use this? Well, we can imagine a couple of scenarios. Let's take the extreme one. Let's imagine that you are on the national team for your country. You're running the individual run at the World Championship. You have done the jumping. You got in first place. You're standing now at the last dog, and you're entering into the ring. If you go a clean run, you are the world champion. You do your run, you've done your preparation, the course is just perfect for you. You believe that you and your dog can do this, and you do the run. And then, unfortunately, somehow the dog tears a bar, or it could be that they're not able to hit the dog walk properly, and they get a 5-fold. You have a good run, but the championship is gone. You are not the world champion. How do you deal with that? I would say that it's allowed to be disappointed. Of course, it's allowed to be disappointed because the potential was there. But the way that you deal with it really determines on how you continue. For some, that could be such a traumatic event that they decide to just quit the sport. For others, if they sit down and they change their perception and ask themselves, what are the things that I take for granted? Well, I'm on the national team. There are so many people that are not on the national team. I have a healthy dog. I have a dog that loves agility. I have a dog that loves to run with me. And we had a great time during that run. We showed what we were capable of doing, a slight mistake, but people still saw it. And we know what we're capable of doing. And you go through this, and that will just fill you up. It is not a tool to sort of lower your expectations and sort of ensure that you can protect yourself so that you don't get disappointed. It is a tool to even the balance so that you can maintain high performance and joy. Because you can take the feedback that you got from that run and become better. At the same time, you can appreciate where you've been and what you accomplished so that it fills the joy throughout the next season. And it doesn't have to be AWC either. It could also be the most important event for you and your dog. Everyone has that one event during the year that really means something to them, that gives them these extra butterflies and extra pressure, that it would actually mean something to us if we managed to do this. And the same thing could happen there. Your role is really to manage your expectations and manage your perceptions. And if you can manage that, you will have the best of both worlds. Now, this tool is not just something that you use when shit hits the fan. This is something that I really advise you to do on a daily basis, to have a routine, or maybe on a weekly basis even, because daily basis could be a bit too much. You find your balance, but you sit down and you make a list of the things that you take for granted. And then you look at that list and you see, how would life be without that? Without this person, without this dog, without this opportunity, without water, without electricity? How would it be? And then you appreciate it for what it is. It will change something in you. It will change how you think and how you see the world. And it will become a tool and a fuel to improve your performance as well. I once was on a talk for the Norwegian Sports University, and there was a performance psychologist, and they had done a research of what were the things that got teenage athletes to persist through their teenage years and become a professional athlete. Their conclusion was enjoying the sport. That was the foundation and remained the foundation throughout their teenage years. Once the performance culture became too high and killed the joy and the appreciation of the sports, a lot of people quit. But if they maintain that joy, the playfulness, the appreciation, as a consequence, that over time fueled their performance as well. You should think in the same way. Use this as your tool. And if you find yourself drifting off, that suddenly performance and titles and ribbons becomes more important than the enjoyment together with your dog, then you have to adjust. You have to catch yourself and then adjust and reconnect with why. Why are you doing this? Because at the end of the day, if you become a world champion, but you don't have a good relationship with your dog as a consequence, you failed. But if you can do both, that is the ultimate success, if that is your goal. One of the things that I have to emphasize is that what success looks like for you is up to you to decide. But you also need to make sure that you don't kill your why in the process and that you end up becoming the handler you don't want to be. You can have both. Is it easy? Not necessarily. Is it possible? Definitely. But you have to remind yourself, you have to know the happiness equation. That is about how you perceive events minus your expectations, and you need to manage both. So you need to have the expectations, make sure that they are not too high, at the same time as you balance it with high enough appreciation, and that you're always connected to why we're doing this. When you have the right why, the right reason, and a strong enough why, the how becomes easy. That is how you motivate yourself. Thank you so much for listening to this podcast. If you haven't yet subscribed to this podcast, feel free to do that. That is free. If you are ready, able, and willing in order to take your performance to the next level, learn how you can balance both your expectations and your appreciation, then go to the link in the description. There's a 14-day free trial to join the community where we look at both the mindset, how to master your emotions and confidence. There's also a whole lot of other stuff there that will help you to become the handler that you want to be. My name is Christopher Anderson. This is The Champion's Journey, and I'll see you next week, next episode, which is with Marcus Lingel.